ברוכים הבאים. Welcome Betty, our
Thank you.
honored guest
Thank
of
you.
being here with us, and welcome Mom for joining us here.
It's my mother, Gloria, and her friend Lee takes care of her.
This is an important experience for all of us as we are about to uncover Betty's story, to hear her story through your questions. It is as part of your learning here at Heschel, it is about the way we treat one another and the way we listen to one another's story. It is a holy task to be able to open our hearts and minds to another person's story. So I have here a little bit of a kavanah as we bring in this experience. May our minds be open to your words. May our hearts be open to your story. We are ready to perform the mitzvah of listening to one story, remembering and learning from your experiences. As we are about to begin our survivors interviews, we hope that the experience today will help and direct us in the kavanah in hearing other people's story. Yehi ratzon milfanecha shetishre shchinatcha beinenu. May it be your will for your presence to reside among us.
Thank you so much.
We, first of all, Betty, thanks so much for
Thank
this
you.
wonderful honor to share this time with us, because the kids really share something in common with you. This is the class that those who came here early on have shared this entire time with you, and those who come since. You've been the head of the school, and they're going to graduate the same time that you're going to graduate from here. We are absolutely thrilled. They have spent a lot of time looking at just a part of your biography and coming up with questions that they really wanted to get into with you. So I think you're going to enjoy them. They're terrific questions, and I want you just to listen carefully what Betty has to say, and she'll listen to you and what you have to say. We're so thrilled that your mom can be here to celebrate this wonderful moment, because for us this is a celebration when you get to sit down with someone and come to know them perhaps in a different way than you've known them before. So I'd like very much to begin our questioning. So Tomer is going to begin the questioning.
Did you grow up as an Orthodox Jew, Reformed, or secular? In other words, what influence, if any, did Judaism have in your home?
I grew up as a Reformed Jew. I think, though, that when I was growing up, I really didn't know the difference between any of the different denominations. My father grew up as an Orthodox Jew, but he decided, as he kind of grew up and took on his own family, he decided that he didn't want to have quite as a traditional home as he had when he grew up. And so I grew up Reformed. I started going to religious school when I was 5 years old at Wilshire Boulevard Temple. My mother used to drive me twice a week to religious school. I became a bat mitzvah at 13, which was unusual at the time for girls. Not that many girls my age did that then, although today it's pretty commonplace for all of you. I went to Jewish summer camp. We didn't celebrate Shabbat every Friday, but when we were home, my mother always lit the Shabbat candles. And Judaism has always been an important part in my family, what my parents gave to me and my sister. And I think that their decisions in terms of raising me was always couched in Jewish values. And I think that's what a huge part that I've taken from my parents and my growing up.
Terrific, thank you. Josh, you have another question?
Were you named after anyone? If so, then who?
I was named after my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother's name was Becky, and so they named me Betty. And my middle name is Anne, and I had a grandma, Annie, also. So it's sort of a combination of those. But I have to tell you something about my name. I really respect that I was named after my great-grandmothers, but I'm like the only person in my generation that was named Betty. And it's always been like, oh, Betty Boop, Betty Crocker, Betty, you know, it's like, oh, my grandmother's name is Betty. So if you think about it, there aren't that many Bettys that are in my generation, but I respect the name because it is the name of my great-grandmother's.
Terrific. Sarah, you have a question about her father's background?
What were the circumstances of your father's family moving to Montreal, Canada from Eastern Europe?
You know, actually, my father's family moved from England. And they were settled in England, so they weren't really in Eastern Europe. It was my mother's family that many years before moved from Eastern Europe.
Okay, so they received the information on the bio had the opposite information. That's why
Was it?
for some
Oh,
reason, so it's
my
mistaken.
apologies.
No,
Okay,
no,
so
that's
my
okay.
father's family did live in Montreal,
Ah.
but they moved
from
from Canada there. And all of my family, both on my father's side and my mother's side, moved to North America prior to World War II. So I think it was just the opportunity of coming to North America, coming to Canada, and just establishing themselves there. As far as I know, it wasn't out of any kinds of persecution or they actually in England, they had pretty good lives. In Eastern Europe, it was the lives of the Jews back then, and as they settled to try to find a better life in America.
Okay, thank you. Roey, you have a question?
Yes. Those of us who have siblings sometimes fight with them as teens would. As a girl, did you have any struggles or fights with your sister?
Okay.
What was your relationship like?
Okay. Well, unfortunately, she's not here. She was planning to come, and she may still come in. But some of you may even recognize her because my sister and I are like this. We are best friends, and we have always been really, really close. Now, I think there are a few things that have to do with that. One is that my sister is 7.5 years older than I am. My parents wanted to have another child, but it took a long time. And so when I came, I was like a little doll to my sister, and she played house with me, and it was so she sort of always took care of me, and we always grew up very, very close. I do remember one time going to my parents, and you may remember this, Mom, going to you and saying, I think you love Karen more than you love me. And you said to me, that doesn't happen. As parents, you love your children equally. Everyone is different, but you love them the same. And sometimes maybe you guys have felt that way, that sometimes maybe a parent favored, your brother or your sister over you. But you know what? Now that I'm a parent, I know that isn't true. Parents love their children unconditionally, and because they always treated us as individuals and as a family unit, there has never been any friction. My sister and I are best friends to this day, and that's from my parents.
Well, as a follow-up to that, Noah has a question. Noah. Teenage
Kaplan?
teenage years? About her teenage years?
Uh-oh. My teenage years.
Teenage years are the years when kids tend to rebel. Did you rebel in any way? If so, how?
Oh gosh.
They
You
want to
guys,
know.
no, this is the sad thing, okay? You guys are going to crack up. Now I'm going to sound like really a generation apart from you, okay? Because my parents were very loving, They gave me a lot of room to grow and all. But there were a couple of times that I just got really frustrated with the kinds of ideas that they had, because I thought that they were kind of very old-fashioned. So I'll share two of them with you, okay? But they are like so nothing when you talk about rebellion, but to me, they were big deals, okay? So the first one was, now I'm going to sound really old again. It wasn't until I was in 9th grade that you could wear jeans to school. Then they made it something and they said you could wear jeans to school, but before that you weren't allowed to. But my father was kind of old-fashioned, and he didn't think that jeans were something that should be worn. His family actually made what they used to call jeans dungarees, and they made dungarees in Canada. They were like before the Levi's companies, sort of. And so my father did not think you should wear jeans to school. And so even though everybody else got to wear jeans, I wasn't allowed to wear jeans. And so I got really angry, and one day I put on jeans and I walked out of the house. So that was a big deal to me. And another time, the weather was broadcast that it was going to rain. And I walked out to go to the bus. I looked out, and it was bright and sunny out. But my father said, it's going to rain. You have to wear your rain gear. I was in 8th grade, the age you guys were, walking to the bus. And I said, but it's not raining. I'm going to look like an idiot with white rain boots and a white slicker raincoat, whatever. And he said, it's going to rain. You wear that raincoat. So I walked out of the door, and I took the raincoat off because I didn't want to be made fun of by my friends. Now, silly, I would remember that, right? But I remember it because it's sort of that struggle that you have, that you want to be respectful to your parents, but at the same time, if your parents are telling you something that is sort of harmless, but it makes you feel like an idiot, you want to have your own freedom to do something. So I took it off, and I still remember it because I feel bad. I went against my dad, but I wasn't going to walk to the bus looking like an idiot.
All right. Ryan, you had a question about her experience?
Sorry. All right. Is there anything that you experienced while in elementary, middle, or high school that inspired you to become a teacher?
I wish I could say I had a teacher like some of the teachers you have that you probably will remember. I think there are some teachers here that you will remember always for how they inspired you. I was not that fortunate to have teachers like that, but my mom was a teacher, and my sister was a teacher, and I thought, well, I love kids. I want to be a teacher. And so since the time I was 5 years old, I always wanted to be a teacher. I wrote about it in my application to UCLA that I wanted to be a teacher. And I wanted to make a difference and work with kids and try to help kids. And I guess that's who I am. I'm a teacher.
Wow. Henry, you want to follow up about UCLA?
Sure. We understand you followed your sister and mom by going to UCLA. Did you ever consider other schools?
No, I didn't. UCLA was sort of the place that my mom went there, my sister went there. They were, I don't want to burst some of your bubbles, but SC was really not in the playing field then. UCLA was winning everything. UCLA was the place to go. It was close to home. I never thought about going away to college. Most of the people I know didn't go away to college in those days. And I went to UCLA, and that was sort of all I knew. If I were to do it again, if I had the chance to do it again, I would go away. I would definitely go away. And both of my kids went away.
Romy?
After growing up in the public school system and then working at a private school, do you notice any differences between kids who go to public school and or grow up in that system as opposed to kids who grow up in the public school system?
That's a great question. Not sure if I wrote this in my biography or not, but when I went back to teach, when I became a teacher, I went back and I worked in the public school system. And I worked at the school that I had gone to as an elementary student. I went and I worked there. And I worked there for 17 years. And I had some amazing students in my tenure there. Kids that were from all walks of life. Some kids who were very much like you, Jewish kids, had a lot of outside support and love and opportunities. And then I had kids that were living in foster homes. I had kids whose parents were in jail, all those different things. When I left public school, I felt like I was kind of turning my back on public education and a lot of those kids. But I was concerned because of the system. And the part that bothered me was that there were so many kids that needed so much, and things weren't happening fast enough. And I know that when you're in a certain grade, when you're in second grade, when you're in 8th grade, you only have one chance at that. And I wanted these kids to have the opportunities and the best experience at that time. And so I decided that where I could make the most impact at that time was to go into the private sector, where I could implement things that I wanted to see happen. And so I think that that's the difference, is that the opportunities that kids get in private education are opportunities that are immediate, that are geared for them right then, and that help take them to the next step. Whereas sometimes in public schools, that isn't able to happen because of all the bureaucracy. But as far as the kids, there are great kids in public school and there are great kids in private school. And every experience is you make the most of it. What you put into it is what you can hopefully get out of it.
Following up on some of your experience during high school and college, Adam has a question.
So, did you have a job during high school or college? If so, how did you balance work and school?
I have worked since I was 14 years old. My first job was wrapping presents at a department store in my neighborhood so that I could walk over there and do it because I didn't drive yet. When I was in high school, I worked at a convalescent hospital that my grandfather ran. And I watched my grandfather, who I love dearly, meant the world to me. And I watched him interact with people, older people who had nobody, and what respect he showed them and what grace he gave them and how he listened to their stories. And that was a really meaningful experience to me. And then when I went to college, I worked at UCLA, and I worked on campus there. I worked in the bookstore for a while, and I did things like that. And everywhere, I have worked, like I said, since I was 14 years old. I didn't work because my parents told me I needed to work. There was something in me that drove me to work, to want to have some kind of independence and to explore different things. So I did that, and I've never had a problem balancing it all, I don't think. I think it was just sort of a mindset that you decide what you're going to do, and you do that. And so when it came time to raising a family, there wasn't really a discussion about whether I was going to be a stay-at-home mom or I was going to be a working mom. I was going to be a mom, and I was going to be a professional person, and I was going to balance it both. And I think that my kids will still say to me today that they are really glad that I had my own life, my own professional life, but that I was a really good mom to them and that I was there for that. So you have to prioritize. You have to figure out what's the most important thing. And some things you have to let go, and sometimes, you have to make choices.
We know, thank you, we know that you have had a great relationship with your parents. Gilad has a question for you.
We understood from your biography that your father died 5 years ago. And if you could share with us, in what way has his death affected you?
A day doesn't go by in my life that I don't think of my dad. I am who I am because of my mom and my dad. My children, a large part of who they are is because of my parents and the values and the sacrifices that they made for us. But my father told me that to live life to the fullest, to be responsible, to care about family, to care about friends, to give back to your community, and that's how he lived his life. And the day before he died, when he was still able to talk, he told me that he didn't have a single regret in his life, and that how proud he was of me and my children, and I carry that with me every single day.
Thank you for sharing that. Brittany, following up about her father's background.
How, if at all, did your father's Orthodox upbringing have an effect on your views of religion?
Interestingly enough, I don't really know what effect they had, because ultimately, there's different ways of being Jewish, right? We all know that. And just because you daven every day doesn't make you more Jewish than somebody that lives by Jewish values. Just because you observe every holiday doesn't make you more Jewish than somebody who performs mitzvot. My father actually wasn't into a lot of the religious kind of traditions. He loved to go on Kol Nidre and to listen to them play Kol Nidre on the cello in our synagogue. And when I go to our synagogue, which I still go to the same one, is probably the place that I feel the very closest to my father, because I can still watch him when he sits there and how he loved that. Does that make you more religious? I don't know. But I will tell you that like I said, the values they instilled in me, and then coming here to Heschel, allowed me to revisit who I am Jewishly, and I participated in some Jewish programs. And so interestingly enough, when I knew my father was very sick and ultimately wasn't going to be around that much longer, I decided that it would be really meaningful for me, for our family to sit Shiva for my father. And I was afraid to ask him. I was afraid to do it. I wasn't afraid to ask him. I was afraid to do it because I thought he sort of had pushed that Orthodox part of his life away. And so I should be doing it because it's meaningful to him, not to me. So I had a mentor at the time who is a Hasidic Jew who lives in North Carolina. And I said this to her, and she said, you need to ask your father. Talk to your father and your mother, and how do they feel about it? And so I went and I asked my father, and I said, when you die, how would you feel if we sat Shiva? Because that's not our practice in our family. And he said, Betty, whatever is going to make you feel more comfortable is fine with me. And so for the first time, our family sat Shiva, and we all found it to be really meaningful, and my children found it to be really meaningful and really, really kind of just reflective and therapeutic and all those kinds of things. So I think, I don't know if I totally answered your question, but it's sort of about sort of the Orthodox part and then coming back to it a little bit.
Thank you for sharing that. Switching gears a little bit to the choices you've made, Andrew?
What was your motivation to become an administrator?
I wish I knew. It kind of happened all of a sudden. I would say that my motivation to learn and to grow is very, very strong. And I had a mentor. It was the first principal that ever hired me. She hired me 2 days before I got married. I applied to 33 school districts to try to get a job because I needed to get a teaching job. And 2 days before I got married, which was 4 days before school started, I got a job, and she gave me the job. And for 18 years, I worked for her. I worked with her. I didn't work for her for all 18. I worked with her. And every time a new opportunity came along, she said, "Betty, why don't you take this class? Betty, why don't you try doing this?" And I did it. And I just kept growing. And the next thing I knew, I was thinking like, well, maybe I could do a little more. Maybe I could do a little more. And so in 1994, she sent me a newspaper clipping. And it said that there was a job as an administrator in a private school. And she said, "Betty, I was thinking maybe you might want to look at this job." And I remember I was in Las Vegas at the time, and I called. It was January 2nd, and I called for this job. And anyways, make a long story short, I got the job. But when I went to start the job, they said, "You know what? Our head of school isn't here anymore. We want you to be the head of school." I had never been a head of school, anything. I got thrown in, and the rest is history, and I'm here. But that's how I became an administrator. It wasn't anything I planned. It just happened, I guess, out of drive, hard work, being around the right people, having people to support you.
They must have seen something in you that had to do with leadership, and Noah Wisner has a question about that from your earlier years.
Did you hold any leadership positions when you were in school?
In school, no, I could never win an election. I ran for student council office several times. My grandfather helped me write my speeches so they would be creative and all, because he was the creative one in the group. But I never won. So I didn't have any leadership positions in school. But then when I was 14 and I joined BBYO, some of you may know about it because they have AZA and BBG now when we were in high school. That's when leadership sort of took off. And it ended up that I guess that was when the pattern started. I started getting involved in things. I started taking on roles. I started doing things. My mother had been a leader. She had been president of her Hadassah group, different things. And that's when sort of the leadership took off. And I started taking charge.
Okay. Simi?
What was it about Heschel that inspired you to work here?
It's a good question. The thing that inspired me the most at first was that a number of my friends had sent their children here when they were growing up. They lived in the valley, and so they sent their kids here. And as I watched their kids grow up, they were amazing. They were confident, and they were bright, and they were engaged in the Jewish community, and they were respectful. And I thought, wow, Heschel must be a great place. And then I used to go to the Heschel Boutique all the time. So when before I was part of the community, and I would go, and the parents seemed really great. So when I actually heard about this job, a number of people told me about it. I said, no, not for me. I'm really happy where I am. But then I was approached by somebody, and they said, let's go to lunch, let's talk. And I did, and it sounded really interesting. And then they said, well, why don't you just come to Heschel and see it? And I came, and I walked through the breezeway, and I was done. I knew this was a place that I wanted to be. It got me.
Wow. Emma?
How has your experience at Heschel affected, if at all, your connection to Judaism?
It's changed my life. Totally changed my life. I think that I always felt Jewish. I was always involved in things, but I never understood Judaism. I never understood, I didn't know a lot of history. I didn't know a lot of tradition. And being at Heschel and having the opportunity to learn and to live it every day and to be around people that have all the same shared values has made a huge difference for me. So as I move on from Heschel, I want to stay in the Jewish community. I want to continue to help and make a difference because it's a huge part of me now.
Alex, follow that up.
We are all assessing our time here at Heschel. What efforts are you proudest of in terms of your leadership at Heschel?
Larry? Watching Larry grow over the 10 years and coming to a place of being able to be the head of this school is probably one of my proudest moments because I just know that the school is in such great hands. Watching the culture of the school for the teachers change to a culture where teachers are totally invested in professional growth and development is something that I'm very, very proud of. And all of you guys, and I'm not saying just you, but all of the students here, to see how much, generally not every day I know, love coming to school, feel invested. When the 9th graders came back last Friday and were so excited to be here, when I see kids in college that have come through and hear them in high school night and to hear what it means and to see families come back, that makes me so proud. And I'm so glad that we have really, really nurtured that and grown that. So that's probably what I'm most proud of.
Jody?
What are your personal goals as you leave Heschel?
My personal goals. Well, one is to continue to be a good wife and mother to my husband and my children. Job as a mother is never done, right, Mom? She's still there. I still call her Mommy. She just turned 88 years old 2 weeks ago. And so that's a personal goal. But another personal goal is to continue to make meaning out of my life. I want to do something that's meaningful. So I want to find something that's going to make a difference in the world, that's either going to continue to help children or to help families, or in some capacity in that way, to be able to use the skills that I have and to give back. And I want to be as philanthropic as I can too, because I think that's really important. My parents have taught me to do that. They've modeled that, and I want to do that too.
Terrific. Or?
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Where do I see myself in 5 years? Hopefully making a difference like I said, somewhere, working with another organization or all, hopefully still connected to Heschel, and hopefully still very active. And maybe a grandma, who knows? In 5 years, maybe a grandma.
John?
If you were to come back to Heschel in 10 years, what would you hope to see?
A lot of the same and a lot of different. I hope to see the same values that have been part of Heschel for the last 41 years, still there. I hope to see a thriving school with kids that want to learn, that are respectful, that are engaged in learning. That's the same. See teachers that are passionate about what they're doing. What do I want to see different? I want to see cutting edge kinds of programs, see whatever that technology brings, a school that's really, really strong in the arts and in athletics, all those things that we've put together. See the classrooms all renovated. A lot of the same and a lot of different, because that's what I think is going to make the best of Heschel.
And Sarah Ermes.
If you and our class are ending our time here, how did we influence you?
How did you influence me? You guys are who I know. How many of you were here when I came? Okay, that's pretty good, right? Okay, and then as each of you came along, whether it was last year or in kindergarten or in first grade or whatever, you guys have been with me every step of the way. So every time we were making decisions about the school, you guys were at the forefront. Because especially for those that have been here the whole time, that's who we were watching. That's who we were measuring against. And so you've had a tremendous impact. And when I had the opportunity to go with many of you to Israel, it was amazing to see how grown up you've become. And I know that you are going to carry on and you are going to do great things, just like the classes that have come before you and just like the classes that are going to come after you.
They wanted to know some of your favorite memories from your experiences here, and I don't know if one or two come to your mind over your years here. There's something that you'll take with you that you think about, any of that, or perhaps there are things.
So my opportunity to go on the March of the Living was tremendous. And then being able to come back here a year later and unveil the butterfly wall, and every year coming back to that has been huge. I think that's an amazing memory that I have. And I hope that that's something that, that's a lasting memory that we've been able to create that will continue on. So I think that that's special. I also think that I have a memory of sitting in my office and hearing incredible singing coming out of the Beit Midrash. And I wasn't sure what it was. And so I came out of my office and I walked in to see what it was. And there were about 10 or 12 8th grade boys. It was the class of, they're juniors in high school now. And they were sitting up on the bima here in a circle, and they were singing and davening just on their own. And it was amazing. And these were kids that I had seen come through, some who had not been that engaged in Judaic studies at times, and some that were good friends and some that were not such close friends, and they were all up here doing that. That was pretty memorable. I don't think I will ever forget that. that the impact of what this school had on them. And they're still very engaged. I think a number of them were the ones that came to do the tefillah from Nuju earlier this year.
Betty, we've taken some time to learn a bit about interviewing and talking and listening and preparing for survivors that we're going to be meeting with and so forth. But one of the questions comes up now as we come to the end of this all too short interview is there something that we haven't asked about you that you would like to share with us? Anything that you care to tell us at this juncture?
I guess the only thing I wanted to say is maybe like a little bit of insight into how I make my decisions and a little bit of advice to you as you move on in life. You're going to come across times when you are going to have to make a decision that may not make somebody else happy. Might be something that is going to affect somebody else in a negative way or in a way that you may not, that they may not want. And you may feel torn into how to do that. And I think that maybe actually in looking back, one of the things that I've had to learn as being a leader is that you can't please everybody. And you can't always make a decision that's going to feel good to everybody. And for those of you who have been with me all these years, you've probably seen some of the decisions that I've had to make, and maybe some of them you've liked and some of them you haven't. But at the end of the day, whatever you do, don't compromise your integrity. Know who you are. Remember the Jewish values that you've been taught and make a decision that feels like the right thing to do. Not just because it's what everyone else is doing, not just because it's going to make somebody feel better, but and not just because it's going to make you think you're going to feel good. Because at the end of the day, be true to what you believe in. And ultimately, you'll always make the right decision. And that's what I've tried to do. And maybe I haven't always made the right decision, because maybe I haven't always, but I have tried to stay true to who I am. And that's what I hope that you will do too, because life is challenging.
Well, I have to tell you, first of all, I'm very proud of all of you.
You guys were amazing.
Came up with some beautiful questions, and we didn't even ask all of the questions, but I'm going to share them with Betty. I want to thank Efrat, who helped us organize all of this. Thank you, Efrat. Really has a strong sense. But I want to say, Betty, you just shared from your heart with us today, and we could see it on your face. We could see it in your tears. We could see it in your convictions. And I think that that's the kind of precious gift that we get when we listen. You recognize the beginning of all of this unit is, of course, everyone has a story. That means that everyone can be a teacher. You not only listen, we're not only students, but each one of us is a teacher. When we talk to others and people listen to us, we have something to share. Betty has something of value. She has built a life of value, and she has many more years to continue to give to the world. But we are thankful for taking this moment in time. And when we're thankful, we say, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'achiyanu, v'kiyamanu, v'hinyanu, asmana zeh. Blessed are you, O God, who has commanded us to come together and has brought us to this moment and sustained us to celebrate with Betty and with her mother, and celebrate this wonderful moment in the life of this 8th grade class as they prepare their last few months here at Heschel Day School along with you. They celebrate this moment alongside you. Thank you so much, Betty.
Thank you. Thank you.